Welcome everybody. I'm Leanne Pilkington, President of the Real Estate Institute of New South Wales, as if you didn't know that already. With me I have got our CEO, Tim McKibbin.
Morning, Leanne.
Hello. And also John Cunningham, who is our previous president, who wisely said to me, Leanne, I'm handing over the presidency. The Institute's in good shape. The industry's in good shape. It's going to be a smooth run. Didn't you, John?
My work is done.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And so what we want to talk about is just the adaptation and the changes and what's going on actually out there in the field. So Tim, you shared a photo with John and I yesterday about what was happening in a local restaurant and the way that they've pivoted. Do you want to share that with everybody?
Yeah. So I was walking down the street in obviously respecting social distancing at the time, just for clarity. And I saw this restaurant. I saw this what previously was a restaurant, which I'd been to a number of times before. And what they'd done was opened up the double sliding doors in their restaurant and put barriers in there, or tables. And then on top of that, they put up drinks, and they were doing takeaway. So they had still running their business, but where a lot of other restaurants in the area, in fact, all the restaurants had closed, but there was a number doing takeaways. But what they'd done is that they said, we can do takeaway meals. Even on the footpath out the front, they had tape to show you where you could stand and where you couldn't. And you could get your takeaway meal, you could get drinks, alcohol and that. But in addition to that, they were making cocktails. So you got a cocktail if you wanted to take away as well. And
I love that, a takeaway cocktail. That's my kind of place.
Yeah, and what that said to me is about this business said to itself, I can't change the world that I'm in. I can't change this. This horrible COVID-19 has been thrust at me, and that's now my world. Now I can sit around and whinge and complain and etc., or I can reinvent who I am very quickly. Reinvent who I am. Reinvent the business that I need to be in this market, and that's what they did. And as a consequence, they still had a business. Now, no doubt it wasn't as good as what it was before, but they had a business.
But it was still going. Yeah, that's awesome. And so from a real estate perspective, John, rapid adaptation is where it's at right now. Talk to us about how your business is adapting.
Yeah, look, we identified very early on when we saw this coming, that it was coming, and it was a freight train that was going to hit us. And if we didn't adapt quickly, we would suffer the consequences down the track. So it was sort of putting a bit of a survival plan in place. The rapid adaptation name I stole from the guys down at Marshall White in Victoria. And I thought it was such an appropriate sort of concept for what we had to do. So we looked at the adaptation in terms of communication. What did that look like? What did our planning? What was the shifts in the planning that we had set up for 2020? What do we have to look at as our priorities and our actions and our plans now? How did our teamwork environment? What do we have to do to adapt in that space? So those are the things that we really focused on early to put into place quickly. And we just see this now as an opportunity to make that a permanent fixture.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly, from my perspective, both with REI and with Lang & Simmons, that whole communication piece has been so important, because I was speaking to someone today who said it's been so nice to have you there, Lee. It's kind of like having a parent, someone to reassure us that they're, and is your team finding the same thing? Absolutely.
The number one thing that kicks in is fear. So whenever there's a massive change, in other words, as Tim said, my whole world has disappeared. What am I going to do? So first response is fear. It's a matter of how long fear stays with people before it turns into, okay, what am I going to do about it? So I think what we've discovered from our team's perspective, and then flowing that through to clients. And in fact, I only got an email this morning from a landlord thanking the leasing agent and the property manager for reletting his property in this really difficult times. And at the bottom of the email, he said, I also want to thank John Cunningham for his weekly updates to us landlords, because it's really giving us reassurance of that we're in the best hands.
And so tell us a little bit about what that weekly landlord communication is.
Oh, I think it's just about putting them in the picture. There's a lot of noise. And so we put a lot of information in the email, and then it's a link to the YouTube video. But the video cuts to the chase, and it's pretty much a reassurance type care video that we've got your back. We're cognizant of the fact that we're working within the boundaries of government regulations and government guidelines, and in fact, what is the basis of what these are about. This whole sort of we're in this together and we've got to share the burden. So I think they just appreciate someone actually coming to the point of what does this actually mean to me, and what can I do about it. So,
and information that they know they can trust is really important when there's so much noise, and particularly on social media, and rent strikes and all of this sort of
and the government just coming out blurting stuff out without actually putting anything behind it. And then when you get the stuff behind it, it wasn't what it seemed in the first place. So that's what they're after. It's cut to the chase. Let me tell you what's actually going. Because the reality, particularly in that landlord space and the tenant space, we talk about risk mitigation as one of the most important things that we do in that space. Now it's loss mitigation. How do we minimise the loss that a lot of these people are going to face? In the residential space that we mainly occupy, with only a small commercial portfolio, the commercial space has been decimated, absolutely decimated.
Yeah.
But the landlords we're talking to are saying, well, we'll stick to the code. I haven't had anyone argue with the code. It's quite interesting. It's sort of like the code's been set, let's follow it through. There are nuances that Tim will talk about in relation to getting through the information you've got to supply with all that. But again, that's what we're here for. We're here to guide.
Yeah.
And so unless you're spending time to actually find out what this really means, and the REI has been fantastic in doing that, your daily updates and that sort of stuff, they're the same thing that we're doing, but you're reassuring the members. And reassuring the members enables them to reassure their clients.
John, you used a word earlier in your discussion, opportunity. And I doubt that many people would be identifying with that. They'd be saying this is all about risk mitigation and just survival and the fear and that. I think all of those words you were using would resonate with people, but the word opportunity, I think, probably would have surprised people. So do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I love Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it's where he goes from the survival mode, the survival thinking that people have. In other words, I have to do enough to get by, and that's what satisfies me. And then you move into the strive mode, which is I want a better life. I know I'm prepared to do something about it. So the opportunity that we've seen, and we've called it strive to thrive. So we're moving from that now as an opportunity. If you really want to thrive, in the past it was almost by default because the market enabled you to thrive if you did certain things. Well, those certain things can't be done anymore. So therefore it's an opportunity to look at, well, what can be done and how can I make the best or get the best out of that situation? So you've got to have something to actually work towards to see opportunity. A lot of people don't see it. So I think it's our role as leaders to help people actually see that opportunity.
So where is that opportunity for the agents that are out there, business owners that are out there watching us today? Where is it?
Oh, look, it's really simple. The opportunity is in connection. The people are looking for those connections that have meaning now. It's the smoke and mirrors, the froth and bubbles, all that existed in our world for far too long. And now when someone actually asks you a question, Leanne, they are asking you a question because they expect you'll know the answer.
Yep.
Right? So if you don't know the answer and you can't say them to them definitively, these are your options, this is my recommendation, or would you like my recommendation? We're moving into that complete area that we always wanted to be in, which is the trusted advisor. Now, the best agents are doing that, and they've always done it. They've adapted quickly, they've done what they need to do, but they're seeing the opportunity of developing far stronger relationships, and I call it the currency of value. We actually, that's our biggest currency, is our value. What value do I bring to the advice? What value do I bring to the transaction? And that's been relied upon, you're being relied upon by the buyer, the seller, the solicitors, all those people that you are at the center of the transaction. Yep. And therefore your knowledge and your skills have to be at the absolute forefront. to guide people through this thing, because they are actually in an area of complete unknown, right? And we all are to an extent, but the reality is we go, okay, I can see the path that we need to take with this. And regardless of what the pundits are saying economically or what the market's going to take a hit, that's irrespective of what people's needs are.
I was speaking to an agent this morning, and he said to me, I'm embarrassed to admit it to you, Lee, but I don't usually have time to follow up my buyers very well. And now I've spoken to every buyer that has been through any of our properties in the last few months, and I can't believe how many of them still want to buy.
Yeah.
And how many of them actually want to sell. I'm like, who'd have thought?
Yeah.
Are you finding the same thing with your people?
100%. I mean, look, I have to say our team have been awesome, always awesome at buyer follow-up. It's just been one of the rules of our business from day one, is that, every single person has a purpose in your business life. You just have to discover what that purpose is now or in the future.
That, yeah.
So therefore, every buyer is a potential seller down the line, but they're also some of the best advocates you'll ever get in your business. But it's just common sense to treat everyone with respect and understand their needs, because that's the role we fill. So therefore, yes, now buyers are gold. Buyers agents are gold. We are putting deals together right now due to the fact that 4 weeks ago we identified that we needed to find out who our hot buyers were. Who are the hot buyers in the marketplace, ready, willing, and able, who have a need to transact or can be influenced to make a good decision to transact. And that's probably the really important thing.
Yep.
Buyers are going to work on fear, and they're going to contract in the majority.
Sure.
Because they just don't simply have the information to make a rational decision. So again, we have to go into this zone now where it's not about pressure tactics, it's about nurture tactics. It's about saying, okay, you're going to need time to think this out. Let me help you with some information that might enable you to make a good decision. And I love the concept of a good decision, because a good decision is different for different people.
Yeah.
But if we get that understanding that we are actually there to help them, and when they realise that, our currency, our value just goes through the roof. And again, we haven't had fee issues in the last month.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Because our currency's greater.
Yeah.
It's like people need us more in times of need. And that's why, we've flourished as a business during this time, because people go, oh, these guys are safe. These guys are reliable. These guys, you can trust them.
Yeah.
And that to me, when the market turns and it becomes a good market, I hate it, because we were having a ball when it wasn't supposed to be a good market.
Yeah, that's so true.
Funny.
Tell us a little bit.
Sorry, Leanne.
That's all right, go on.
John, if we can get into the specifics now, Leanne and I have been fielding a lot of calls from members who are saying, one thing you've got to solve for us is this social distancing issue in relation to showing property. Because all I'm allowed to do is take one person and show the property at any one time.
It's just like the old days, right, John?
Yeah. So I used to throw the doors open.
In our car.
Yes.
So you throw the doors open, and I used to, say 2 months ago, and then the years before that, and everybody came through. That was our system. It worked, etc. That's all been taken away from us now. We're only allowed to have one person coming through, and there's problems with that if you've got a husband and wife that want to look at all the problems. And Leanne and I fielded a lot of calls where people said, you've got to fix that problem. So that is a pretty severe change in regard to a lot of people's views. How have you and your team dealt with that one?
I just don't see it as a problem. It's like you can see things as a problem, or you can see things as a solution. So, a problem's a solution in disguise. It's like, okay, we are facilitating a process that has been set by law. Right? It's no different to any law that we work under in relation to underquoting or material fact, whatever it is. That's the law. Trying to fix a problem in a time of crisis is not what it's about. It's like, how can I work with this situation? Look, quite frankly, we just haven't had a problem. This is how we're working. So everyone adapts to how they're working. They're spending time with people, getting to know them and getting to know their needs. And again, like your friend Leanne, it's like, wow, who would have thought? This is fantastic. But they're actually developing relationships that have meaning and could be really strong long-term relationships with these buyers. So yes, the wife has to wait outside while the husband goes through the property. That's what it is. 5 minutes for you, 5 minutes for you. But we're not having a line of people up down the street.
No.
We just can't have that situation where the government steps in and makes it harder for us.
No.
It says, which is what they did in Victoria. The agents were not doing the right thing, and the government picked up on it, and they went, no. And a lot of agents were bragging about this and that, and the government, we'll stop this. That's how it works. We know that. The governments respond to media and social commentary. And if we give them the ammunition, it's like pointer boards. Don't put pointer boards out telling people you're showing properties, because it becomes a public viewing. It's an open home as soon as you put a directional sign out. These are just common sense things. Don't try and find your ways around it. Find ways of working with it and seeing, again, the opportunity, Leanne, in working with that. Say, okay, silver lining in this is I'm developing stronger relationships. I'm having intelligent conversations with my buyer and my seller. Yeah. Because I'm full of knowledge that I can advise them both on how to do this. So,
and that's probably, it's a massive change from back in the days when I was a real estate agent. Buyers were absolute key, and we developed really strong relationships. And the advent of the open home, whilst it was good for agents because, it was a great time management tool, it was not a great relationship tool. So you just didn't develop the relationships with the buyers who, as you know, are your next vendors, right? Once they buy a property in your area, they're the vendor that you want down the track. So
absolutely.
This is, it's a really good change for us.
I look back at my early career when we started doing open homes, and because I started doing them because we were doing them on auctions, but we weren't doing them on private treat. I went, well, this is crazy. Let's do them on everything. But the number one thing that I did was when I found a hot buyer, I offered them a private viewing.
Yeah.
And I think that if one thing is going to come out of this when we come out the other end, it might be the end of open homes. They're too efficient, and they're awesome social proof, and they work on so many fronts. But the opportunity to create a private appointment with a hot buyer, and sometimes to even meet the vendor, have a conversation, is one of the smartest things that you can do in that environment, obviously subject to different circumstances. Yeah. But I think what will come out of that is smarter. Rather than this churn, I've got to get this deal, on my days. That's like, oh, really? I just don't see that. I think if you take a long-term view, you see beyond the necessity of doing fast, sharp deals all the time.
There hasn't been a long-term view in real estate, and I get it. It's the way we're paid, right? There's a whole lot of issues around that we will not get into right now. I did want to go back to your Strive to Thrive initiative. Can you tell us a little bit more about the detail? Because I know a lot of business owners out there are looking for ways to keep the teams engaged, to keep them accountable, to keep them energized. So can you talk about that?
Sure. I mean, look, what we did with that is we set 5 pillars up that were really, I suppose, going to be the basis of what the program was about. And those pillars start with connecting. So the number one thing, I'm just going to pull them up here on my screen. Accountability, here we go. So we've created an accountability thing for everyone to do each week on these 5 pillars. Connections, the first one. So in other words, what are the number of connections? We sort of hit a 25 to 30 key nurture clients. In other words, who are your main referrers? Who are the people that you do most business with? Where's the value component? You're going to connect with those people. And then there were commitments. So I'm going to commit to 20 connected calls per day outside those nurture calls, which are probably about 5 a day. So we can trace those. So they're the commitments you're going to make. It's following through on your connection, following through on the commitment you're making yourself. Then we looked at what value you're adding. So record and look at the value add to the client this week. So make some notes on what your value adds for clients were that week. Next one was relevance. Where is your relevance in the marketplace? Is your knowledge up to speed? What have you actually had advancements and outcomes, and what have you learnt this week to make your relevance key? And the 5th one was discipline. How did your plan go? Did you create new routines, habits, and stick to them? What did that look like? And the idea behind that is that it's a simple KPI, But the idea is that we want to hold everyone accountable to themselves, accountable to their buddy, and accountable to the business. So this is the sheet that I'll be getting every week. We're starting it this week. And we felt that there was this absolute necessity right now to keep people more accountable than ever before, because it's too easy to get into the fear mode rather than the opportunity mode. It's too easy to get caught up in not working normal or what they think is normal. So creating a new normal through this accountability program, the Strive to Thrive, is to help them get to this place where they're going to be better off when they come out the other end than they were when they entered it. Because where they were when they entered it was very complacent, almost running habits, fear of change, and all those things. So the rapid adaptation fits in with this perfectly, because rapid adaptation means that we are moving things forward, particularly from the automation space, both in property management and sales. We've got a lot of work happening there, so we've actually accelerated that. So do you want to talk about some of the automation that's
yeah?
So our two big automation exercises with property management is our property. We've taken that on this year, and so we were going to be segmenting that over a 6-month period. But what we're doing now is we're bringing that to try and have that actually finalised by the end of May, so that we can have all the automation elements in that just becoming normal parts of what we do. So the team are learning that. We've got a specific implementation team working on it, and that is just sped up so everyone is into that mode.
So tell me, I know that there's been a lot of conversations around the technology in the property management space for quite some time, and there's been a lot of property managers that have been threatened by that don't want the change, that have been sort of digging in. Are you finding now that your property managers have been forced into actually making change, that they're embracing it in a different way than they were?
Completely. Yeah, absolutely. And it is. So their job at the moment is just increased in what the time they have to do. They've still got their normal job, and they've got all this negotiation that's happening.
John, whilst we're on property management, we talked a lot about sales here, and I have a great deal of sympathy for our property managers, what they're going through now, and no doubt what's going to be happening going forward. They're going to be doing a lot more work, and a lot of it is going to be very unpleasant. I would have thought having negotiations with tenants, trying to get relief for those people who are entitled to it, and we do understand the difficulties they're going through. And also, we've seen a proliferation of people who aren't entitled to it, but going to bat up their opportunities anyway. So, are you thinking, how are you going to support those people in your business?
Oh, look, the number one thing that exists in that space is communication. I mean, we've got our communication platform set up from a weekly whole team Zoom, which is on this afternoon. It's a Friday session. We have our full sales team Zoom on a Monday morning now. We normally have our sales meeting on a Tuesday, but we brought that forward to a Monday. Full property management team Zoom on a Tuesday. And then individual, we've got three, for sales, 3 Zoom training sessions through the week that I'm running one this afternoon. Andrew runs one, and James runs one with different sort of topics in that. So, like, for example, Andrew's one is very much about adaptation. He's a number one agent. His adaptation is so fast. He sometimes doesn't even know he's doing it. It's like, how do I adapt to this world and get the best out of it? James is about nuancing the deal, and it's the same in property management. We're running 2 training sessions on that a week, and that is, one is on in terms of landlord tenant communications, and the other one is just on doing the job and innovation and the automation elements of it. So making sure those communications. Then we've got the individual teams communications. They're whip Zooms. In the PM pods, we have pods of 4, which is 2 asset managers, a leasing manager, and a new business manager in each pod. So their communications are critical. And the same applies in our marketing department and the operations. They're all communicating through set meetings that we set up for the whole week. So to actually make sure everyone's really comfortable with those sessions, after each one we say, are we good to do it next week? You know, is there value in everything that we're providing? And it's yeah, absolutely. You know, we're also doing a lot of things, Tim, that are involving the team, both socially, but, you know, not physically socially. We tried a whole team drinks thing, and that was a disaster. Well, it wasn't fully a disaster. It was just like, how do you manage, you know, 50 people plus on
it's too hard.
on a Zoom? You just can't do it.
Yeah.
So we've set up a couple of competitions. So last week we had a cooking competition. So everyone had to cook the best meal and do the best presentation and you know, video it and do all kinds of interesting things. This week it's been a fitness challenge. So everyone's posting videos of their fitness regime or photos of their fitness regime, and we even had someone do Irish dancing last night. You know,
I love it.
It was fantastic. So, you know, fast motion yoga and fast motion exercise programs and 10K fast motion jogs. It's been absolutely brilliant. Everyone's got into the spirit of doing that. We even had Georgie this morning out doing yoga out on the grass at Fairlight while a bird's trying to attack her, and you know, listening to our yoga teacher Facebook Live thing that we've done for the whole team as part of our Cunninghams Care program. So all these things, and then this morning we had the Cunninghams cleanup, where the whole team went out and cleaned up our local beaches and lagoons, all dressed up, social distancing in play, and collected a truckload of rubbish. And we're going to make that a regular occurrence. So we're connecting on all these other things to make sure that we are still a team. And
awesome.
I think, again, when you look at opportunity, Leanne, coming out the other end, these are things that will really, I think, mean a lot to everyone as part of our team culture.
And John, you said that a lot of the changes that you're making right now will continue. What are some of those things? Obviously, our properties are a permanent change.
Yep.
What else are the changes that
we're bringing in real-time agent as well for our processes in sales. And we're another one for the automation element is that, but it's also the mapping the customer journey. We've mapped the customer journey, I think, 3 times since we started the business.
Yeah, right.
And it's now been redone in line with real-time agents. So that customer journey mapping will really be such an important part of us ongoing. But again, we're bringing that in faster.
Tell me a little bit about what that looks like and why it's changed in the last few years.
Look, it's interesting. When we did it originally in 2001, we in the sales environment, for example, we found 364 client touch points, critical touch points, moments of truth. Wow. in the sales process, from appraisal right through to post-settlement and then relationship developing. So we identified that. We reviewed it in 2008 and then in 2013, I think. But it was very analog.
Yep.
We introduced it into Agent Box in I think 2012-13 as activity schedules. But it was a clunky sort of thing in that environment. So now that, you know, real-time agent and Agent Box are integrated and all that stuff, we'll have an actual tech automation component of that customer journey. In other words, all the things that the company controls in communications and puts the quality control over. And then you've got the next layer, which is the agent or their agent team's communications and points of value. In other words, where are the wow moments along this journey?
Yeah.
So remapping those has been so critical. It's not, we haven't had to reinvent the wheel every time we do it because we've already got the wheel.
Yeah.
But that wheel has been quite interesting how technology has changed that. And so therefore we probably have more changes in this current review than we did in the previous review. But what that means at the end is that things aren't falling through the cracks.
Yeah,
so
right.
we look at the customer journey as a never-ending journey.
Yeah.
Right. It's something that we have to be aware of. It doesn't finish at settlement. You know, to me, the most important phone call you can make in the whole customer journey is the phone call you make a week after settlement.
Yeah, I agree. So many people don't want to make those calls though.
And the offer of help. I've got to tell you, in my career, hot water systems. I've gone out a week later to check on why it's not working, or why the gate's jammed. And they're the things that people remember.
They are. They're such important calls.
So
I've just got a couple of questions. Firstly, from Kobe, one of the issues, Kobe's down on the south coast. A lot of buyers are coming from Sydney and Canberra, and they're too scared to drive 2.5 hours because they might get a fine from the police. Well, Kobe, it's important to remember that one of the reasons people are allowed to travel is to look at property, whether it's rental or for sales. I think it's reason number 8, if my memory serves me correctly.
Correct.
Yeah. So that is.
And they haven't said what distance. No.
No, that's right. That's exactly right. They haven't said you can only travel locally. There's been no limitations because we actually checked that, didn't we, Tim?
Yes, I was going to say we had that in writing from Fair Trading.
Yeah.
Because there was
just make
some
sure
people.
Your buyer has the email from you or some verification of the actual appointment that's been made.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. We had some folks that wanted to go out to Mudgee to view some property, and it was a question we were saying to ourselves, what's reasonable here? But it turned out not to be what's reasonable. It turned out to be what was a genuine reason.
Yeah.
So Kobe said, we've got a document that highlights that, but some buyers are still unsure. I note that Victoria have made it very clear, specifically mentioning real estate and viewing property for sale, having amended into the Act for clarity. I don't know. I think it's pretty clear. I'm not sure if there's anything else we can do in that space, Tim, but you and I might take that offline.
Well, I don't know what they're doing in Victoria. To be frank with you, I'm having a hell of a lot of trouble staying up with what's happening in New South Wales.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah, there's
what I do know in New South Wales at the present time is that you can go and view property. And that was our interpretation of the health order, and that was confirmed by Fair Trading. So
yeah, absolutely. There's also when can we expect the regulations for commercial? Isn't that the $64 million question?
Yeah,
we would love to be able to tell you that
every single session, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. It's we should have had them already on. The conspiracy theorist in me now is starting to kick in. And I'm wondering whether or not they're delaying it to coincide with Parliament being called back on the 11th of next month.
Yeah.
So there's my conspiracy theory, because I know the other states and that have already delivered it. So
interesting.
We're in this rather odd position now because we have a code, but the code hasn't been activated.
Yeah.
So what do we do? Do we do deals consistent with the code? So
yeah,
I don't know.
So we have got Linda Rudd coming to be part of the webinar 2 weeks from today, because we were not confident that we would have the code for next week, the regulations for next week. So Linda's going to hopefully come and help clarify a few things. Thank you for the staff challenges and the team ideas, John. They're all great. My jacket is again popular, and I have to say Tim challenged me to a Hawaiian theme today, and I think I'm potentially the only person in the country that could jump into her wardrobe and find a Hawaiian suit.
I love it.
But anyway,
it's funny.
We shall see. We shall see at 4 o'clock.
Hawaiian shirts don't count like a Hawaiian suit does, my friend. Sorry, John.
I was going to wear a flowered shirt today, and just somehow forgot.
Next time.
And next time.
So Chris has asked, when this is all over and the restrictions are done, what will you do on day 1, week 1, and month 1 in your business? Interesting question.
Oh, look, I think like anything, you have to gradually move out of where you are into where you're going to be. But the reality is that we will have a plan. We'll have a plan that we'll execute because the plan, the Strive to Thrive plan is a 90-day plan.
Okay.
Right. So the first month was those 5 pillars that we're working on, and we will massage that and create a second part 2, which will be for June, and there'll be part 3 in July. And I imagine there will be a part 4 in August and September 5. You know, it will go on. So the day 1, week 1, week 2, whatever it may be, I expect that we will be already planned for that to actually happen. In other words, we've got clients right now that we're working with and working out when they're going to come into play, when they're comfortable in coming into play. In other words, when this happens, I'll be prepared to do something. So it's not a matter of saying to a client, when this is all over, you're ready to whack. What does that actually mean when this is all over? This might take 12 months to be over, but people will get confident to transact. In other words, I'll get, in fact, beyond
it's already happening though, right?
Completely. We just looked at our JobKeeper situation for April and we failed dismally because we're only 9% down on April last year. So if we can continue that, I mean, one of our business goals was not to actually meet the requirements of JobKeeper. You know, it's not a bad business goal.
There's a lot of people out there throwing things at their computer now, John, because you said that. But I think it's that, you know, the thing is that you adapted quickly. From what I can see of your business, you adapted quickly, you move the plan as it's required. And that's what a lot of small businesses don't do because they're so busy in it, right? And it's not their fault. It's not the business owner's fault, but they're so busy being the number one income producer or the senior property manager that they are too in what they're doing. So how do you help people that are in those situations, do you think?
Well, I think Leanne, in relation to Chris's question, he's making the assumption that we're going to go back to where we were on day one. And I don't think that will ever be the case. I read something the other day and it said, who has taught people more about technology, the IT person in your business, the CEO, or COVID-19? And I think it is certainly the latter. Because yours truly here detests technology, and yet I haven't had a choice. I've been forced into it. And the other thing that this has taught me is I can work from home. I can do things like this from home. I didn't know I could do that.
No.
So when I come out of this process, when Chris and John and yourself, everybody else comes out of this COVID-19, we're going to be different people. So whatever the plans that we had prior to that, we'll jettison them, not entirely, but partially, and then start to think, I think, going forward in a different way. So to answer Chris's question, I think we're probably still formulating what we're going to be on day 1, week 1, month 1.
You're right.
I actually think that COVID-19 has been the disruption that the industry's been waiting for the last few years. We've been talking about disruption and new business models and all of that sort of thing. I think that this has been more disruptive than anything.
Oh, look, everything else was just distractions, Leanne.
Yeah, totally.
You know, this is a disruption. And, and I think, you know, again, if you look at the opportunity of that disruption, but to go back to the original question, okay, there's 2 parts to it. It's like, how do you come out the other end, but how did you enter it? The other end is it's going to be staged. We're going to go through stage 2 and stage 1 to come out the other end, right? So it's going to be a slow adaptation in that sense. But when we went into this, we started having conversations with clients about it. We started working out who was in the market as opposed to on the market. In other words, who was actually ready, willing, and able to sell, and then who was ready, willing, and able to buy. So our average days on market is significantly lower than our competitors. What we call our absorption rate, the stock we carry to what we sell each month is significantly different. We're always selling more property in a month that is 10 days on market and that sort of thing than anyone else. So it's like, okay, we're taking on the right stock to start with, and as we're not taking on liabilities, we're taking on listings. Coming out the other end, it's about having those conversations with sellers, potential sellers, as to when they're going to be ready to act. So it's not a matter of this being over. It's a matter of having the conversation. It's okay, when this happens, how will you feel about that? How will that change your perspective? So in other words, the influencing that we do in that space, to me, is the area that agents need to concentrate on. It's not convincing people to do things. It's influencing them by giving them good information to make a good decision.
And we just have to communicate in a different way, right? And we touched on it very briefly around the marketing message that's going out, and we need to be very careful. We need to learn from the Victorian situation.
Absolutely. And look, the number one thing, and a bit of dialogue coaching here for everyone, is having the what if conversations. What I said about bringing buyers and sellers into the market during this time, it's what if we do this? What if you didn't do this? Because unless you actually put propositions to them of things, and it's the classic thing with a seller is, if I had the ultimate buyer for you, we've just got one because we've just sold the property and this is the ultimate buyer for you, how would you feel about that? What would that look like to you? Is that an opportunity for you that you take? Because the worst thing that can happen to you is the values stay the same. We're not talking about the market going up and you being out of the market. The worst thing that can happen to you is that happens. The best thing that can happen is the market actually drops further. You're cashed up, you go and rent somewhere. So you have to have those what if conversations. You've got to have intelligent conversations that make people think, stimulate their thinking to go, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. We're just having some agreement saying the ability to influence with the best information is absolutely spot on. So, yeah. Tim, I have got a question for you. Do we wait for the regulations or do we start negotiating? This is going back to the commercial question.
Yeah, so if you listen to the Office of Small Business Commissioner, that was their advice: start doing it now and comply with the code. I think that's probably
because we don't think that we don't think the regulations will be significantly different to the code, but there's always some nuances, aren't there?
Yeah, there is. But having said that, the states have done different things. They put stimulus packages in that have changed the way that the code would apply and these sorts of things. But as I said, the OSBC said that you could start going and doing deals now compliant with the code. My personal view about a deal is something both parties are happy with, and I think that's the best deal you can do. So
I can live with. I don't know that anybody's going to be happy with the deals at the moment. But
look, I think that's right.
Yeah.
I think you're 100% right. It's a deal that we can live with, and knowing that both of us are going into this having to shoulder some of the pain, but try and come out of it at the other end of the negotiation with something that you can live with. I've heard some creative stuff too, where people have said, "Well, I'll continue to pay my rent, but I want you to do this fit out, and I want you to extend my lease, and I want this." And they've done some of those sort of trades, which I think is clever.
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone, we've got about another 10 or so minutes. So if you've got any questions, now's your opportunity. Just pop them into the chat box. So John, I did ask you when we spoke yesterday how your team are coping, and you said that there's a real mixture around how people are coping. And are you finding that changes over time as well? So somebody's coping really well today, but tomorrow they might not be?
Absolutely. And I don't think it matters what size team you're in this situation. Whether you're 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, you've got to be understanding that everyone's going through different stuff. You don't know, and if they're working from home, they're in that home environment the whole time, or whether they're working in the office, they still go home. There's so many pressures on so many fronts. Families torn apart, grandparents not being able to see grandkids, financial stresses all round, and people trying to work their way through everything. And again, anyone working in real estate, underlying everything is their job security. What's this look like? How is this going to affect me? They're hearing about other agencies putting people off and doing all that sort of stuff. Yep. So there is this great uncertainty that sits in that space, again, no matter what size team you've got. So any leader in that space is one of the number one roles is reassurance. Now, reassurance is an interesting thing because you can't say, oh, your job is 100% protected. That's not something that any business owner can say to anyone. No. But what they can say is, I'm going to do everything in my power to protect your job. And with the JobKeeper program, that makes a massive difference, because if you don't comply, if you're not eligible for it, you should be able to survive.
That's good news, right?
It's good news. But most people will be come May or June.
Yes.
And depending on how they report, whether they report or whether they apply based on projections, or whether they base it on their actual GST accruals or cash.
Yeah.
So there is a provision for projections, which will be the way that we'll be doing it, for example.
For sure,
because
yeah.
we know that in April we didn't comply. We weren't able to do it.
Yeah.
In May, we probably will be.
Yeah.
Which means at the end of May we can apply for it.
Yeah.
So we're at this stage talking to our team about all these things. We're actually telling them, giving them updates on where we're at with JobKeeper, where we're at with government assistance, where we're at with sales PM, and it's a weekly basis.
Yeah, that's really good advice actually, because people just want to know. They want some, even in uncertain times when you can't have certainty, at least if they've got all of the information that's available, then that gives them a little bit of comfort.
Look, we've had a couple of our super teams that, they've got their assistant agents and their admin people, and they've all dropped their hours to assist that team through this. So they want to keep the team together. Yeah. And they know that they'll come out the other end all the stronger for it. But breaking teams up and doing that sort of thing in this world. Now, we know property managers are a goal at the moment. You've got to, and the hours they're putting in, and what we're saying to our property managers is, this is an investment in your future. What you're going through now, in fact, you're more fortunate than a lot of people in terms of your job security. May not be the case in commercial space where incomes are just dropping dramatically. But in residential, and again, I'm not talking because there are some areas that have been hit 50% in requests. We've been a bit more fortunate than that, but the people still have to do the job. And so that's one of the things that in the value of our asset and what we're doing in businesses, we've got to protect that asset. We've got to come out the other end. And I just keep saying this, better than we entered this.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. A couple of questions. Periodic inspections. I know when, John, when you and Kylie and I spoke, was that only 3 weeks ago?
Crazy.
Yeah. Kylie was doing, her team were doing periodic inspections via technology, and your team weren't doing inspections at that time.
No, what we did for that first, we are doing them, I think, from next week. And it was just simply to say to our tenants, we won't be coming down, right? Yeah. We'll be doing this. We'll be putting things in play from a technology perspective.
Let's just let the panic die down and work it out.
Look, we've been of the view that just don't pile on too much at once with a lot of things. Just take your time, and again, with like that landlord and same with our tenant communication, it's just layering information up.
Sure.
That helps them out.
And so you're going to start doing them via technology. Do you know what technology you're going to use?
Oh, I have to ask somebody else that.
Okay. Can you ask?
I'm going to quote Leanne.
I have people for that. Yeah. Can you find out and let me know?
I will do that. Yeah.
Okay. Now, will you be encouraging your teams to do landlord and vendor feedback calls via Zoom or FaceTime on the other side of COVID, or will you go back to face-to-face?
Oh, look, I think there'll be so much more in the Zoom space. I did a Skype one the other day. I've done the Google Hangouts ones. I mean, boy, there's so many things you can do, FaceTime, all the rest of it. This will become one of the biggest changes. And I think it'll become one of the biggest changes in business. You think of, I've got 2 son-in-laws who are in the IT world and often travel around the country. And they're going, you know what, we're more productive doing this than we were flying here, there and everywhere. I
don't think we'll go back to face-to-face board meetings, at least certainly not every month, Tim. I mean, it's, from an REI perspective, it saves a fortune by not having to fly people in and out.
I'm already on it.
Yeah, I'm sure you are.
What we'll see, though, I think, is much more remote working environments.
Yeah.
I know our friends at Toop and Toop down in South Australia have started at the beginning of the year, before all this happened, changed their property management working space where people, I think, are spending close to 50% of their time working from home or remotely. And I think that's, talking to our team, they actually like coming to work for the social aspect of it.
Yes.
More than anything. But do they have to be at work 8 hours a day? They don't. No. And I think that, the sales environment's always been that way. And again, you talk to our sales teams and they love coming in for bouncing stuff off each other. They love the environment of that. But do they need to be there all the time? No. Having 8 o'clock Zoom meetings before you actually do anything in terms of whip meetings with sales, I think will become very common. Yeah. It doesn't matter if where you are. You can do it driving the kids to school even.
Exactly.
I think the flexibility that this will open up and will lead to far more efficiencies, and efficiencies lead to effectiveness. So
yeah, I agree.
That will be great.
Okay, I've got a technical question, Tim. Did you want to go first?
I was just saying, picking up on what John said, got a friend of mine who works for an international insurance company, and they've been shut down worldwide, even worse than we are in Australia. And he said with everybody working home, their productivity, quote unquote, has gone through the roof. So, which is very interesting. People aren't going down to the shop and having a coffee or hanging around the water bubble or having chats. He said it's just it's gone through the roof. So
I can tell you, I'm finding that myself. I'm not leaving this bloody chair. I'm surprised. I thought I'd be really easily distracted working from home, to be honest, even though I'm a leader. But I'm absolutely not. It's really been a wake up call for me. So I'm not sure what I'll do moving forward.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I've spent more time on my ass in the last 3 weeks than I have in a long time, and it's. I think we have to be careful of that. I
started yoga yesterday.
Oh, well done.
Yeah.
Well done. That to me. If I didn't do yoga 3 times a week, I would be in a mess.
Yes.
But plus I'm working more at the moment, but that's just a necessity. For the team.
We all are. So let me go to my technical question, Tim. The restrictions refer to moving. You can go and have a look at a property that you're going to live in. How does that leave our investors? Can they go and have a look at a property that's an investment property and they don't really want to live in it?
Well, yeah, it's a good. That would probably classify as going to work, wouldn't it? I mean, you are allowed to go to work.
I think you could argue it, but I don't know. We'll take that one offline and ponder it a little bit more.
It's a good question.
We'll update you at 4 o'clock.
We haven't been asked that question before in this space, but I do know the enthusiasm to go and inspect your own residential property has dropped away since government decided that wasn't going to be a tax deduction. So, people were very enthusiastic about going to see their property previously.
Yeah, totally. But I think this question refers to people buying investment property rather than actually
buying one. Yeah,
it's actually buying something.
Yeah, I think that would be that'd be okay, going and buying a property.
Yeah. Okay, John. Did you? We've just got a few more minutes, so anything you guys want to finish up on?
What purpose are you actually doing it? Well, I'm buying for investment, but I'm actually going to live in it in 5 years or whatever it is. I doubt you'd have issues.
No.
Because you can still, as an owner, if you've got repairs to a property that have to take place, I know with my holiday house, I'm actually going through council approval plans and I've got to meet builders and all that sort of stuff. Is that a necessity to do? I've chosen that it's not right now, but it could be if I had things that had to happen. If I was told I had to fix up my fire break or I had to do something like that, I'd have to do it. It's a necessity.
Yeah.
But this sits outside the necessity. It's actually couched in a separate.
It is very, very evolving. Leanne and I started out with our friends in the auctioneering, and they said, no, you can conduct your auctions from the lounge room. Yeah. And we went, well, that's difficult. And then we finally ended up with a position now where you can, an auctioneer can be in their own rooms with the agent there, or they can go to the agent's offices and the agent be there, but obviously with all the social distancing and the rest of it. So that was an example of where that particular area of our practice was evolving. It really is an evolving piece of business around it.
Yeah.
And now that there's talk about relaxing some of the restrictions, I think whatever we're saying is gospel today probably won't be tomorrow.
And that's the thing that I always encourage people is just to keep up to date, because the information is changing every single day. So you can't rely on what was said yesterday because there could have been something changed today. So I don't think we have any more questions. So I might just take the opportunity to say thank you to both of you so much. I know how much you've both got on your plate, and really appreciate you taking this time to chat with members. And no doubt I'll be seeing you both again very soon, at least through the screen.
Thanks, Leanne.
Yes.
Take care.
Thank you. Good to see you, John.
You too, guys.